From sports and speedruns, this is This Week in Gaming History. Today, we take a look at a first-party portable gem on the Game Boy Advance and an entry in one of the longest-running mini, or should I say micro-game series around. This is January 10th through the 18th. Our first game takes us all the way back to 2005, a time where the PlayStation 2 was king, when the 6th generation of consoles was beginning to wind down, and when Nintendo held complete control over the portable video game market. Released on January 10th, 2005, this is The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. The early development history of this game is unknown. Capcom, the developers of the Minish Cap, began development of this game as early as 2001. At that time, they had just finished up the development of twin Zelda games, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, for the Game Boy Color. It appears that Capcom was eager to begin development on a new Zelda game for Nintendo's new portable handheld, the Game Boy Advance, and development began right away. So, why was this game released in 2005? It turns out that before Capcom could get very far in development, their attention and resources were diverted to develop another Zelda game. A Link to the Past and Four Swords Adventures, also for the Game Boy Advance, was the game that Capcom had to work on. Although they only developed the multiplayer, Four Swords, it still diverted enough resources and time for progress to halt on this currently unnamed Zelda title for the GBA. Yet, once A Link to the Past and Four Swords was released on December 2nd, 2002 in North America, the developers were able to get back on track. Now, at this point, we're in 2003. The Japanese and European releases of A Link to the Past and Four Swords were looming. Yet, on February 24th, a surprise announcement is made. In an interview with a Dutch magazine, developers Shigeru Miyamoto and Eiji Aonuma revealed that a new Zelda game indeed was in the works. Sadly, I cannot find a transcript of that interview anywhere, but what I could find was a tantalizing quote regarding that year's E3. Quote, "We have many new games this year at E3." And Minish Cap was nowhere to be found at that year's E3. 2003 came and went without any news. But by E3 2004, Nintendo felt they were ready to show off what they and Capcom had created so far. Here's what they displayed. At this point, many of the mechanics that would make this title unique were here. The unique puzzles, the ability to transform into a Minish, and even the kinstones were already here. And this is already almost a year before release. As the end of 2004 began to draw near, some interesting details began to emerge from Nintendo regarding the game. The first of which was that Europe would receive the game before America did. Although there are many theories regarding why Nintendo would do this, the most likely theory was that Nintendo wanted people to buy the Nintendo DS in the United States, having released on November 21st there, while driving sales to the GBA in Europe. Ultimately, the game released in Japan on November 4th, 2004, in Europe on November 12th, 2004, in the United States on January 10th, 2005, and in Australia on April 7th, 2005 to mostly positive reviews. And by 2006, it had sold 680,000 units in the United States alone, making it the 37th best-selling game all time on the Game Boy Advance. The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap, has more of the tried and true Zelda gameplay from past installments. Go to dungeons, fight bosses, explore, gain power-ups, and there is quite a lot of plot continuity here too. Vati from A Link to the Past and Four Swords appears once again as the primary antagonist, petrifying Zelda in the process, and it is up to Link to save her. Although this time, Link has a friend in the form of his hat, a Minish named Eslo. Eslo can shrink Link down to Minish size, which allows Link to do things that normal Link couldn't do, such as falling through cracks in the ground. In addition, we also have the Kinstone mechanic, where Link can fuse his Kinstones with the Kinstones of other characters within the story, which, if it fuses successfully, an event within the game will occur. The reception for this game was largely positive. Currently, the game holds an 89 out of 100 on Metacritic, with critics praising its Wind Waker-esque visuals and gorgeous music. Yet, compared to other Zelda games, this one didn't perform as well. And that wraps up our first game today, The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. Now, for our next segment, let's take a look at some of the other events that occurred during this week. On January 10th, 2001, Mega Man 64 was released, appropriately enough for the Nintendo 64. It was a port of Mega Man Legends for the PlayStation 1. On January 11th, 2010, the indie game VVVVVV was released. Up next, we have the second game in the Legend of Zelda series, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. It released on January 14th, 1987, on the Famicom Disk System in Japan, but interestingly, it wouldn't release in North America until 1988. On January 16th, 2001, Mario Tennis for the Game Boy Color was released. It's very interesting because although this is the companion title to the N64 game of the same name, the substance of each game is entirely different, with Mario Tennis on the Game Boy Color featuring an RPG story mode, while the N64 title doesn't. On January 16th, 2007, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Justice for All was released for the Nintendo DS. And finally, on January 17th, 2005, EA Sports and ESPN signed a 15-year deal for usage of ESPN's broadcast, online, and print content in EA Sports titles. It's very interesting because I haven't seen anything of the sort since NCAA Football 14. So, now that we've gone over some of these minor releases, let's get into our final game. Our second and final major release today is a Wii staple. Released in North America on January 15th, 2007, this is WarioWare Smooth Moves. WarioWare Smooth Moves began development in late 2005 at Intelligent Systems, and also inside Nintendo at their SPD division. According to an IGN interview with developer Goro Abe, the game consistently had around 20 people working on it, with, quote, people joining in and then dropping out, end quote. Other highlights from the interview were that during this time, the developers had around 200 microgames and around 17 to 20 ways to hold the Wii Remote for the game. Yet, this is basically all we know about the development of WarioWare Smooth Moves. There is an E3 build of the game from 2006, but all known footage is either extremely hard to discern or lost. If we take a look at the final build of the game, we see that the controls are very intuitive. Like I said, even before release, 17 to 20 different control schemes were in development. That being said, some of the micro games here are very simple and easy to grasp, such as drinking water or popping a balloon. Ultimately, when it was released around the world, it sold almost 2 million copies. So that wraps up this week in gaming history. I know that I covered 8 days this week, but that's only because I want to transition back to a Monday release date next week. Anyways, as we look forward to the week ahead, we hope that you do too. Have a great week, and that was This Week in Gaming History.